A night full of seizures I can't remember. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report was sent in by Ben, when this happened, New Year's 2020, the drugs used, Diphenhydramine, Bupropion, Lisdexamfetamine, and Buspirone, at a dose of 500 milligrams of DPH, 900 milligrams of Wellbutrin, 120 milligrams of Vyvanse, and 30 milligrams Buspar. The route of administration: the Wellbutrin and Vyvanse was snorted, and the DPH and Buspar was taken orally. Gender, male. Weight, 250 pounds. Age, 20. Height, 6'4". Prior experience, he notes, "My prior experience includes about any common drug you can think of. I've tried it. My favorite drugs are heroin, Benadryl, and various research chemicals." And the setting, late at night in his apartment, spanning into the evening of the next day. Okay, so quite the combination today. Another one that should never really be considered. Far from it. Now, we've covered diphenhydramine multiple times on the channel, and most of you probably know it's a deliriant capable of a nightmare trip with a heavy tax on the body. We have also covered Buspirone recently, which if you don't know what that is, it's an atypical anxiolytic, and you can find more about it on the report we made as I break it down a little. Now, DPH on its own in high doses is often considered risky enough, but to add both bupropion and lisdexamfetamine is a recipe for a rough time, possibly leading you to serious harm on yourself or even death. Bupropion, more commonly known under the brand name of Wellbutrin, is an atypical antidepressant. It's atypical because it technically is a cathinone stimulant, which we won't be breaking it down today, but DPH in high doses can be hard enough on the heart already, same with the dehydration. So adding this to the mix most likely just made all that worse. And the same can be said for lisdexamfetamine, more commonly known under the name of Vyvanse, which you can just see in the name itself that it's an amphetamine stimulant. And also the thing is with these stimulants, these aren't low doses by any means. For anyone without a tolerance, these doses should be far more than effective. But even these two stimulants together could cause major problems for someone, let alone while tripping on DPH and the dangers that could bring. The Buspirone was most likely taken to help Ben calm down, but you'll see what happens. I'm sure the title tells you enough this wasn't a good experience, but I'm sure this report will be interesting, so without further ado, let's dive right into this. Some backstory before the actual trip report. I'm a male, 20 years old, 6'4", and 250 pounds. I had no tolerance to DPH at the time, and I took it on an empty stomach. Yes, I know stims plus DPH is very, very dangerous, and I was aware of it at the time. This was roughly 2 months after my 7th month severe addiction to DPH had ended. I had only used it one other time in those 2 months. I considered myself experienced with the substance. I once had a month-long binge on it, where I did 600 milligrams every 18 hours. During this binge, I had combined it with some wild shit and had a few big trips at 1.2 grams. Anyway, on this particular day, I took a 300 milligram Wellbutrin XR and 220 milligram Vyvanse XR at the start of the day. I don't remember the exact times because I just don't keep track of time in general, but it was probably around noon or 1 p.m. Around 8 p.m., I crushed up a Wellbutrin and snorted all of it. I then broke open 4 capsules of Vyvanse and snorted 3 of them. About 10 minutes later, I took 500 milligrams of Benadryl. I didn't feel any effects from the Benadryl besides the dry mouth, confusion, and music enhancement. An hour after I took it, I started to feel the body load and everything else. I was having small hallucinations in my peripheral vision. Small things moving, static, streaks, red dots appearing for a second and then disappearing. I never hallucinated any colors other than black and white on this low of a dose of Benadryl, so it was interesting to me. I crushed up another Wellbutrin and snorted about a third of it. The body load from the Benadryl lifted instantly. That was the only difference I noticed with this. I also felt more alert mentally, but my eyes were still hard to keep open. I snorted the last capsule of Vyvanse about 15 minutes later and could then focus on stuff pretty clearly. My memory was a little better, and it was much easier to type on the keyboard. I didn't have such a short attention span anymore. I'm not sure what part of the trip this was, because I don't remember a lot, but I remember I then snorted the last of the Wellbutrin. I remember my eyes being hard to keep open, but there was no body load, and I still had all the mental effects of the Benadryl. A couple minutes passed before an extreme sense of paranoia came over me. I thought people were watching me, hiding in the dark or waiting for me to walk by. I saw shadow people through the corners of my eyes, hiding in the darkness. But when I would go to focus on them, they would disappear. I knew they were watching me, though. I spent about, I'd say, 30 minutes, maybe even an hour, just walking from my computer in the living room to my bedroom. I stood there frozen most of the time, just staring into the darkness, paranoid something was there. I always do my DPH trips at night with all of the lights off except my monitor. Even without the effects of DPH, I'm still and always have been super paranoid in general. When I felt terrified of something on a trip, I'd use my phone flashlight to see that nothing was there. This night, my phone was on a low battery, and the flashlight doesn't work if it's too low. My only phone charger was in my room, so I couldn't use my computer to charge it. I walked around very, very slowly, checking every corner in my house, because I was super paranoid something was there. The auditory hallucinations were what really convinced me there were people there. I heard footsteps, breathing, scraping, and shuffling every once in a while. I remember getting to my hallway that has dark rooms on each side with the doors open, and I ran past them because I was scared something was going to jump out at me. This trip was the most paranoid and terrified I had ever felt in my entire life. Every time I took a step, I felt like someone or something was going to get me, and I was going to die. I was panicking the whole time, and all I could think to do was just stand there, hoping these people didn't notice me. Eventually, I got to my kitchen and took 30 milligrams of Buspar because I thought it would help. It didn't, and all it did was make my eyes feel heavier. Then, I remember getting to my bed, sitting down with the light on, and after that, I have absolutely no clue what happened. I think I had sat down on my bed between 1 and 3 a.m. Next thing I know, I woke up the next day around 4:30 p.m. Last thing I remember from the trip was that my door was closed, the light was on, the window was open, and I'm 90% sure I spent some of that time I didn't remember seizing on the ground / in my bed. When I woke up, the window was closed, the door was open, lights were off, and a couple of my hoodies were thrown around my room. My PS4 controller was under my bed for some reason. My bathroom was a mess too. There were pill containers on the ground and in the sink. They were all closed, so I assume I couldn't get them open. I also had a splitting headache, and no amount of aspirin or ibuprofen would help me. My chest truly felt like it was going to explode. To be honest, as weird as it sounds, I'm glad I tried this combo. I'm sure people have done stims and DPH before, but I've only seen a few trip reports with them. Anyone who wants to try this combination, I wouldn't recommend it, unless you want to be a paranoid, tweaked out mess. Not to mention the extremely high risk for a seizure and or a heart attack. It's 10 times more terrifying than a straight DPH trip, and definitely not worth the risk.